Common types of psychopaths. While there are as many variations in the personalities of psychopaths as there are among normal people, the following lists some general stereotypes. Narcissists. The most benign form of psychopathology is pathological narcissism. Narcissists, like the mythological Greek namesake Narcissus, are so overcome with self-love that nothing else in the world matters to them. They need a constant source of narcissistic supply, which is attention, adoration, recognition, awards, and praise. There are two basic types of narcissist, the somatic and the cerebral. Somatic narcissists take pride in their looks and appearance. They will flaunt their sexual exploits, brag of their accomplishments, show off their muscles, and display their toys. They are often health nuts, hypochondriacs, and sex addicts. Because of their barren inner life, they continually need new thrills simply for the rush of adrenaline. These thrills range from criminal activity and substance abuse to increasingly bizarre sexual acts. Cerebral narcissists love their own minds. They are arrogant, condescending, and know-it-alls that pride themselves on being smarter than everyone else. Their narcissistic supply comes from fame, notoriety, awards, and displays of wealth to create envy in others. The danger to the public from narcissists is to drain on energy, time, resources, and emotional well-being. A narcissist is interested in a person only for what narcissistic supply that person can provide. They will gladly accept love, attention, affection, adoration, praise, emotional and financial support, but being without empathy, they cannot reciprocate any of it. Any partnership they enter into will always be one-sided. Once a person ceases to be the source of narcissistic supply, or a better source comes along, they are discarded without hesitation or consideration. Thus do narcissists leave behind them a trail of broken hearts, broken dreams, empty wallets, and abandoned children. The victim. Commonly used by female psychopaths, but by no means unheard of among males, is the professional victim stereotype. Preying on what psychopaths see as weakness in others, sympathy, the female psychopath appears helpless, pitiful, emotionally fragile, persecuted, and sexually vulnerable. She pretends heartfelt gratitude for whatever small kindnesses strangers provide her, but behind the mask is a cunning, ruthless, and loveless predator. Often using sex as the hook, they can juggle several victims at a time, draining them of life and money until there is nothing left, then skipping town to avoid the repercussions. Con artists. Not all con artists are psychopaths, but psychopaths make convincing con artists. Being excellent liars, they put that talent to use by cheating others. Without a conscience or remorse to stand in the way, they are free to cheat old women out of their life savings, sell quack cures to terminally ill patients, or shortchange the blind. They are usually charming, articulate, and convincing, and make successful salespersons. Unlike the narcissist, the con artist is not as concerned about love or attention as money. There are two types of cons psychopaths engage in, the short con and the big store con. The short con is probably the one that most often comes to mind when thinking about con artists. These are the tricks and cheats that require no great intelligence to pull off, such as shortchanging, bait and switch, and a 3-card Monte, to name a few. Psychopaths that have a higher intelligence level and/or come from a more respectable background are more likely to establish the big store con. These are large-scale frauds that all rely on a basic strategy. Take something of little to no value, artificially inflate that perceived value, sell to gullible investors, take the money, and run. Traditional big store cons use real estate, stocks, and bonds as the lure. Even reputable multinational corporations, accounting firms, and banks are all capable of being nothing more than a large-scale con. While the short con can deprive a victim of a few to a few $1,000s, the big store cons are especially destructive, capable of destroying an entire nation's economy. Malevolent psychopaths. More popularly known as antisocial personality disorder or sociopaths, the malevolent psychopath is the real-life monster of our nightmares. These are the wife-beaters, murderers, serial killers, stalkers, rapists, sadists, pedophiles, gangsters, interrogators, and terrorists. They are usually career criminals and can amass an extensive criminal record while still in their early teens. Often showing their contempt with a sneer or smirk and with a vacant stare from cold, predatory eyes, they are dangerous, unpredictable, and easily triggered into violence. Cowardly and sadistic, they tend to target the most vulnerable in society: women, children, and the elderly and disabled. Often impulsive and opportunistic, sociopaths will not hesitate to commit any type of crime and will use manipulation, intimidation, and violence to get what they want. Professional psychopaths. The malevolent psychopath is the most dangerous. However, it is the professional psychopath that is the most destructive. While the victims of the former can range into the dozens, the victims of the professional psychopath can run into the tens of millions. These psychopaths litter history with genocides and the destruction of entire nations and empires. Historical examples include such monsters as Stalin, Pol Pot, Ivan the Terrible, and Caligula. While there are many that make it to the pinnacle of the political stage, there are also such historical figures as J.P. Morgan, Randolph Hearst, and Meyer Rothschild, professional psychopaths that reach the pinnacle of the financial stage, where they cause no less misery and destruction as their political counterparts. The professional psychopath is just as malevolent, narcissistic, and remorseless as the other stereotypes. They are just much smarter. They can be found in any profession, but usually governments, corporations, and religions will be thick with them. In a corporation, the professional psychopaths are ideally suited for advancement. They can masterfully fake their abilities and credentials, use their intellect and charm to manipulate and exploit others, and generally backstab their way to a high position. Once in power, their masks slip, and they abuse their power and bully and sabotage their co-workers and subordinates. In politics, the professional psychopath's ruthlessness and cunning gives them a distinct advantage over any non-psychopath rival. They make charismatic leaders, manipulating and brainwashing the naive, vulnerable, uneducated, or mentally weak. Mastery of lying allows them to make whatever outrageous campaign promises straight-faced, with, of course, no intention of keeping any of them. A life spent faking being human gives them the ability to assume the roles of virtuous public servant, the perfect father, husband, advisor, mentor, and everyman. In addition, when things get rough, they have no inhibitions in playing dirty, and readily resort to murder, assassination, persecution, war, and genocide. The third sphere of power that has traditionally attracted more than its fair share of psychopaths is religion. A quick glance at the history of religion, from the bloody sacrifices of the Aztec priests to the tortures of the Spanish Inquisitions, and through seemingly endless religious wars waged in the name of peace and love, makes their influence plainly visible to all willing to look. Since most, if not all, great religions are constructed on falsehoods, compulsive liars make the perfect proselytizers. A look at recently created religions such as Mormonism and Scientology show their founders, Joseph Smith and L. Ron Hubbard respectively, were at least compulsive liars and more likely full-blown psychopaths. Charismatic cult leaders such as Jim Jones and Sun Myung Moon were indeed psychopaths, while televangelist preachers that rake in millions from their gullible flocks are at best con artists of the highest caliber. When psychopaths dominate and seize control of the major cultural institutions that influence a society, a final type of psychopath is created. Secondary psychopaths. While the classic genetic psychopath is one who is born with whatever genetic trait that causes this pathology, there is another group of people that behaves just like the classic psychopath, who were not born that way but were created. Secondary psychopaths are created in two ways: through trauma and through groups. Trauma from an accident, drug addiction, or severe physical and psychological abuse can destroy that part of the frontal cortex of the brain where empathy and conscience is processed. While such individuals are a tragic reality in our society, they are in most cases just as incurable as their genetic counterparts are. The second way in which psychopaths are created is through groups. There are certain groups that will attract psychopaths because of the opportunities of power and influence membership provides. Usually such groups will quickly become led and dominated by psychopaths. Other non-psychopathic members of these groups would have to become psychopaths in order to survive. For example, in a street gang, sociopaths make the best leaders, and therefore most gangs have a sociopath at its head. Other psychopaths are also attracted to the violence and power of a street gang, and so together they create a psychopathic value system. The gang becomes a psychopathic entity. The non-psychopathic youth who must live within the territory of such a gang is given two choices: become a victim of the gang or join them. By joining the gang, the new recruit must also adopt the group's twisted value system and behave accordingly, thus becoming a secondary psychopath. Conversely, at the other end of the scale, we can see the same principle at work in corporations. The money and power of a corporation attracts the cerebral and narcissistic psychopaths. In a corporate environment, they have many advantages over their non-psychopathic competitors for promotion. Not surprisingly, most corporations end up being run by psychopaths. As with a criminal gang, a corporation's culture adopts the twisted values of its leaders. Those who would seek employment must likewise adopt, or at least appear to adopt, the corporation's essentially psychopathic mindset. What is important to understand is that a mob has no conscience. Individual members may or may not have a conscience, but when they are part of a mob, they will have none. Most organizations, from street gangs to corporations, are mobs. It would be a mistake to place your trust in them, since they can turn predatory in a moment and deprive you of time, money, sanity, and livelihood.